Section 1. Who I was before that night of my victimization. The interrogation room smelled like old coffee and disinfectant. Under the fluorescent lights, 2 detectives fired questions at me, their eyes hard, their minds already made up. They never asked who I was, never asked about the life I'd lived before October 1st, 2004, never wondered if the man sitting across from them, blood still covering my shirt, shorts, socks, and sneakers, was capable of what they suspected. My name is Bruce. This section isn't about proving innocence through alibis or opportunity. It's about something the justice system rarely considers, whether a person's entire life can testify to their character. I grew up knowing violence intimately, not as the one who inflicted it, but as its target. My parents taught me what fists could do, what emotional starvation felt like. Most children learn love first. I learned its absence. That education shaped me, but not in the way you might expect. Where others might have continued the cycle, something in me chose differently. Call it instinct. Call it a vow, made too young to remember clearly. I would be gentle, not just in words or intentions, but in those split-second moments when the body acts before the mind can think. The detectives didn't care about any of this. They had their unshakable theory, and no amount of evidence or observation would matter to them. They had a woman's lies. They didn't need or want to know who I was, and how impossible it would be for me to harm anyone. Chapter 1. Growing Up, the Birth of Shame. The water at the Y was warm against my skin. I am 4 years old, maybe 5. I floated near the wall, weightless. My instructor encouraged me to swim to her, out there in the deep end of the pool. I got scared, arms flailing, chest burning. Then I saw her, my instructor, floating just out of reach. She was probably in her late teens or early 20s. I jumped, my arms locked around her neck. She steadied me, didn't push me away. My heart hammered against her shoulder. She held me until the panic passed, safe, but something else lingered. A warmth I'd never felt before. Protection, care. Even at 4, I knew it was something that I wasn't meant to have. I wasn't supposed to know what it felt like to be held, to be protected, to be cared for. That is the birth of shame, the house of silence and isolation. The fire truck siren wailed from the toy they'd bought me. I screamed, terrified. My parents laughed. They told that story for years, how I'd panic at the sound. Never once in their retelling did they mention comforting me, because they hadn't. Now, decades later, when my cat startles at something falling from the table or counter, instinct takes over. I kneel, call to him gently, saying, "It's okay, you're safe, everything's okay." I gave a cat what was never given to me. My father, Bruce Sr., moved through our house like a ghost, present but unreachable. He provided. That was love, apparently. My mother, Kathy, was different. With her, you never knew when the storm would hit. I kept my eyes down around my father. Looking at his face felt dangerous. The message was clear. I was wrong. Not for what I did, for existing. Our maternal grandparents lived with us until I was 13. They served as our only shields. I remember Grandma standing up for me, her frail voice telling my parents, "Don't hurt Bruce." Her voice thin but firm. That small moment, that whisper of resistance, was the only time someone tried to intervene. Grandpa worried when I helped with the garbage, afraid I'd lift too much. Then they died. Assaults, emotional deprivation, and indifference. My mother was so volatile. I could never predict when the storm of her rage would strike. When it did, I would be slapped, punched, pushed, kicked, or she'd throw something at me. My father hit less often. This wasn't discipline. Discipline has rules. This was chaos. We vacationed at Disney World, had an in-ground pool, did all the things families do. But joy? I have no memory of joy with them. They did things for us, never with us. The first vow, to never be like them. I made a vow in the quiet of my childhood, early teenage bedroom. I will never become like them. I will never lose my temper. I will never let anyone feel unsafe because of me. I would spend my whole life keeping that promise. The arrival of a protector. Paul moved to our neighborhood in 3rd grade. He saw something in me that needed protection. So I came out of my shell and was noticed. When Donna kissed me that year, I pretended to hate it. Had to. Boys were supposed to hate girls at that age. The rules would change later, but the damage was done. In junior high, Paul wasn't in my classes, but he watched out for me in the neighborhood. Thomas, from our old neighborhood, pulled me aside the first week. 9th graders might pick on 7th graders. Tell me if it happens. It rarely did. When it did, Paul handled it. Once, biking up a hill, a dog charged us. I froze. Paul jumped off his bike and chased the dog back across its own yard. The dog, on its own territory, ran from him in fear. He never asked why I couldn't move. He just acted. The arrival of family and a deeper shame. 7th grade, age 13. My mother reconciled with her estranged sister over something I never understood. Suddenly, we had family. Linda, Sharon, and Karen, my adult cousins. Their children, Barbara and Dan, were my age. Dan joined the neighborhood boys for tackle football, bodies crashing, fighting for dominance. I watched from the sidelines. Even in childhood kickball, winning had turned my stomach. Someone else had to lose for me to win. The equation never balanced. Barbara and I talked instead. About school, about books, about nothing. When we said goodbye, we hugged. Normal cousin behavior. An invisible shell, the complete silence of selective mutism. I am 14 years old. Paul, Carrie, and I shared a paper route through our sprawling neighborhood. Knocking on doors, collecting payments, forced words from my throat. I'm collecting is all I had to say, but it was still something. I was still approaching everyone in the neighborhood, and there were only half a dozen people out of all the people living in some 50 houses. This was a big deal for me. Simple transactions. But at school, still nothing. Not a word in class. Teachers stopped calling on me. 15. The paper route expanded my boundaries, but school remained a tomb of silence. 16. Jack Donlin hired me at his medical mart across the street. Real customers now. Real conversations. This wheelchair folds here. The walker height adjusts like this. I can deliver it on Tuesday. My voice worked fine outside the school walls. Inside them, it died. I hiked Ragged Mountain every chance I got, 10 years old to 18. The trees never asked why I couldn't speak. A second vow, I was about 17, and my sister and I argued over the channel we would watch on TV. I stood too quickly. She flinched, cowered. The shock hit me like cold water. I'm not going to hit you. Everything shifted. I saw what I'd become in her eyes, someone to fear. That night, the second vow, no one will ever fear me. In a home where fear was a weapon, I rejected it. The joy of extended family. Tainted with jealousy, beginning when I was 13, family gatherings had become routine. 3 years of Sunday dinners, holiday celebrations. Barbara and I had grown closer. When she hugged me goodbye, something twisted in my stomach. Not the hug itself. That was innocent, cousins being cousins. But my mind began to second guess. Was I holding on too long? Did I want this too much? I was too shy to ask any girl out, too silent at school to even try. Maybe my starved need for connection was making something out of nothing. Maybe I was the one making it wrong. Then my mother noticed my general preference for my aunt and cousins over her. You certainly seem to prefer them to us. Her voice casual venom. I said nothing. Later, do you think they're going to let you live with them? The question hung in the air. Sharon, Karen, or Aunt Maureen. They were the only ones who could have taken me in. I hadn't been thinking it. Now I couldn't stop. They have their own lives, was another thing I remember Mother saying, making me wonder if I was just being tolerated because I was family. I also knew I wanted to be a parent early on. Our youngest cousins, Tracy, Jamie, and Wayne, needed attention when they wanted to go outside at a family gathering, maybe walk to the park. They could count on me to be the one to play with them, watch them, take care of them. The final realization. At one point in my late teenage years, my mother spat out a bizarre statement. You're a house devil and a street angel. The irony burned. House devil? I was a straight A student, never in trouble, never rebellious, the perfect son on paper. But I saved my kindness for customers, for cousins, for anyone who wasn't them. At home, I gave them only silence and distance. She was right about one thing. I saved my warmth for those who deserved it. By then she knew. After 4 years of family gatherings, of me lighting up around my aunt and cousins, while staying dim at home, she knew exactly where I wished I belonged. I'd wanted parents, just not mine,